Hi, students. Welcome to the amazing section and amazing lecture again. What is today's topic? That is quite a topic of interest. Why? Because today we are going to study something amazing in science. And when we start studying about science, why not should we talk about humans? And why not should we talk about their origin? Yes, today's topic is all about cell and their origin and a little introduction about it. So it's going to be really interesting. Be geared up in the session and let's start with it without wasting much time. We'll be sharing screen so that it will be an easy understanding for all of you. Here it is. Cell, the unit of life. So we are going to study this unit today and a little bit introduction about this unit. And don't forget to ask doubts in the middle of session and to create doubts. That is very important for us. And of course, when we are studying through that, we have to keep our mind to each and everything. Why? Because we need to think about each and everything, right? Supposingly, if we are studying about our body, we should think what our body is made up of and whatever it is made up of, how that thing is even made up of. So, all those things are extremely important for all of us to know, right? So, I will be the learning buddy for all of you in today's lecture, and my name is Neha Arora. So, cell, the unit of life, I think you all might have heard about it in your previous grades as well. So now the cell is the thing which the human being is all made up of. Not only the human being, but all the living organisms are made up of the cell, the unit of life. So, what is an introduction? The introduction is cell is the basic, fundamental, structural, and functional unit of all living organisms. You know, everything in our body has some basic, fundamental unit. Okay, if I just talk about kidney, that's nephron. Okay, so there is every functional unit. If I talk about nerves, the unit is neuron. Okay, so all of the things have their basic unit. You will get to know about these words. For heart we speak cardia, for stomach we say gastro, right? For lungs we talk about pulmonary, for kidney we say renal. So everything has their words and some basic unit. Hmm? Now, we know that the cell is the fundamental structural and functional unit of all living organisms. Means the number of living organisms which I can actually see on the screen, and all those living organisms which I can't see in the screen and in my real life, which I can see maybe under the electron microscope or some of the microscope of the higher magnification power. So all those organisms are made up of cell. There can be a lot of cells which we can be made up of, or there can be just single cell. If I just talk about lot of cells, that is known as multicellular. And if I talk about just a single cell, that's unicellular. Which is the largest unicellular cell? Do we know about ostrich egg? Yes, that's a biggest egg. That's the largest cell. Yes. So, and the longest, that's a neuron, that nerve cell. Okay, so we are going to talk about so many interesting things today, and you will be left with so many untold questions in the session for which you'll need to answer me and keep you engaged. Now, cell and introduction. Before we start studying about anything, it's very important for us to know who is the scientist who actually gave this thing to us, who actually described it. So there is a beautiful story about the scientist known as Robert Hooke. He was a scientist who discovered the first dead cell, not the living one. So it is said that in the cork, the bark of the tree, in the cork, he saw some spider-like appearances as we can see in the screen. So when he magnified it, he termed it the term cellulate, and then it became cell. So that was the first time in the cork he saw the first dead cell. And there was another scientist who's Anton von Leeuwenhoek. So we need to also see the spellings of the hook in both of the names. So when I come to Anton van Leeuwenhoek, the first observed and described a live cell. So it was just about the thing in the pond, and there, in the pond water, he described the first live cell. So these are the two scientists. The first one described the living, dead cell, and the second one was Anton van Leeuwenhoek, A.V. Leeuwenhoek. So he discovered the first live cell. So that was all about cell, the smallest unit. When we study about cells, it's very important for us to study about microscopes as well, because through it only we can see how this beautiful thing cell is and what are the all organelles inside the cell. So the invention of the compound, the electron microscope revealed the structure and details of the cell. So when the microscope was invented, the compound and electron. So I would like to give you a small knowledge. The compound microscope is of the less dimension, less magnification, and the electron microscope has a good magnification, like up to 100. Okay, so now when this microscope was discovered, we can actually see the cell. We can also see the cell in the cheek when we see the buccal area, or when we peel up the onion, we can see the cell under the microscope, of course. Now, the cell theory. So there was a scientist named Malthus Sheldon in 1838. He observed that the plants are composed of a cell. So there were two scientists, Sheldon and Kwan, so who discovered the cell theory and they formulated the complete cell theory. But what is the cell theory all about? So the Sheldon observed the plants and he composed the term cell. He said that all the plants are made up of cells. Swan, he said that he reported that cells had a thin outer layer known as plasma membrane. He also found that the plant cells have the cell wall. So that was the only difference. That was a major difference, I would say. Not the only, but the major. The major difference between the plant cell and the animal cell is that the plant cell has a membrane, cell wall on the outer side, but the animal cell just has the cell membrane, or we can say the plasma membrane. When we go deeper into this chapter, we will get to know about the plasma membrane, about the cell wall, and I hope you might also know it because this chapter has been throughout the all our grades journey, right? So he also found that the plant cell have the cell wall. So both the scientists they concluded that plants and animals, all of them, all the living organisms are made up of cells. But then there was another scientist who was Virchow. So he said that another scientist whose name isn't mentioned over here, he said omni cellula is cellulae, which means all the cells arise from the pre-existing cells. So there were three major things gave in the cell theory. First, that all the plants and animals are made up of cells. All the plants are made up of cells, all the animals are made up of cells. And the third one is that the cells arise from their pre-existing cells. Means every cell has their mother cell. Now there were scientists like, yes, here it's mentioned, Rudolf Virchow. He explained that cells divided and new cells are formed from the pre-existing cell, that is omnicellula is cellula. He modified the cell theory, and the statements of the cell theory were now very clear to us. What were they? That all living organisms are composed of the cells and the products of the cells, and all cells arise from the pre existing cells. So now we know that the living organism means any organism which shows some of its metabolic activity, some chemical activities or some metabolic activities, which is more precise word to say, are, and all of them are composed of the cells and products of the cells, and all cells arise from the pre-existing cell. Now here we can see an overview of the cell. All cells contain cytoplasm. Now what is this new word cytoplasm? Wherever we see the word plasm in biology or in science, it's very clear that we are talking about some kind of fluid. So cytoplasm is the fluid which is spread all over throughout the cell. And this one is where all the cellular activities, all the chemical reactions, everything is occurring in the cytoplasm because organelles they kind of float in here. Okay? The other organelles inside this fluid. As we can appreciate from the diagram given below, we have fluid, which is cytoplasm, and all the organelles like mitochondria and other organelles over here are spread. Okay. Now let's talk about another term that is ribosomes. So ribosomes, they are non-membrane bound organelles, means the small structured ribosome, which is the part of the cell, is not any bounded by the membrane. They can be found in the cytoplasm. They can be found in the chloroplast, and chloroplast is again another term which is just present in the plant cell. So that is a pigment from the plastids, chloroplast. That's a plastid. When we go more into it, we know the plastids are chloroplast, chromoplast, leucoplast. So there are three types of plastids. So those plastids, they are only present in our plant cell. Okay, so chloroplast is the one plastid which gives the green pigment to the leaves, and through which the leaves are able to do the process of photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is the process by which the green leaves make their own food. So how are the green leaves called the green leaves? By the presence of the green pigment, and that green pigment is gotten to the leaves by the chloroplast. Now there is mitochondria, which we say is the energy house of the cell because it gives us energy and ATP. ATP is stored, ATP is made in mitochondria, and ATP is what? Adenosine triphosphate. And on the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum is said rough only when the ribosome is present in there. Okay, and ribosome's function is to do the protein synthesis. Means the protein of the cell or in the cell is made by the ribosomes. I hope things are clear. We studied about cytoplasm, which is the fluid in which all the cellular activities and this keeps the cell in the living state. Now, when we talked about the ribosome, we said that it is non-membrane bound organelle. It is found on the cytoplasm also. It is found on the endoplasmic reticulum. And in the chloroplast is the plastid, and mitochondria is the energy house of the cell, and on the rough endoplasmic reticulum. I hope this much is clear. Now, this was a bit of introduction about what a cell contains. Cell not only contains cytoplasm and ribosomes, but we can say that all cells contain cytoplasm and ribosomes. Like all cells do not contain the cell wall, like only plant cells contain the cell wall. This is how we differentiate it. An overview of the cell now. The smallest cell, the smallest cell is the mycoplasma, which is about 0.3 micrometer in length. The largest isolated single cell is the egg of the ostrich that I already told. Here it is. And the longest one is the nerve cell. which is up to the tip of the finger to the length of the spinal cord. Now, the size of the bacteria is 3 to 5 micrometer, and human RBCs, they are 7 micrometer in diameter. What is RBC? It's red blood cells, and they are biconcave in shape. So, RBCs are the part of the blood, and these are the cells of the blood. Blood does not have only RBCs, it has WBCs and platelets also, and the plasma as well. Okay. Now, an overview of the cell again. That's just a small introduction that what we are going to study more and more about the cells. Okay, so based on the function, based on the shape of the cells, maybe disc-like, polygonal, columnar, cuboid, thread-like, or irregular. So there is an overview of the cell completely. Like we have here a lot of things like collenchyma tissue. So there are different types of cells by which these tissues are made, and these tissues are the plant tissues: parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. Sclerenchyma are usually made up of dead cells. Parenchyma is made up of living cells, and again we have the collenchyma. Now the human body cells are the bone cells, and the bone cells are known as osteoblast or osteoclast cells. Then we have the muscle cells, and then we have the nerve cells, then we have the blood cells, then we have the gland cells, then we have the reproductive cells, and there are two reproductive cells, sperm and the ovum, by which the reproduction is made possible. So that was a bit of overview for all my dear students and for all the students out here that we studied about cell, and I hope it was an interesting session, and we are going to not end up here. We are going to study more. And for you, the homework is to find about any 10 important different types of cells which are found in the human body along with their function. Thank you. Bye bye. Get up. Bye bye.